Okay, ready?
Yep.
You're going to get it right. First time.
Get what right?
I'll say hello, and then
Ready?
you say hello, and then
Hello,
the billowing
the-
hilltop.
Hello.
No.
Hello.
No. Oh, Christ,
And then the
that'll-
billowing hilltop.
We are the billowing hilltop. I hadn't worked anything.
You haven't done anything after
Yeah,
that, have
You've
you?
only got 45 seconds.
What do we do? No. I know what we do.
Total
I know what we do.
loser.
We play
Dirty.
tabletop role-playing games. Currently, we're playing Pathfinder 2nd edition. We're playing the Outlaws of Alkenstar Adventure Path by Paizo.
Oh,
And there's hundreds of episodes of us playing D&D.
Yep.
We just sit around a table, playing games and having fun, and you can hear us wherever you're hearing this. Search Billowing Hilltop. We hope you join us.
Yay! Thank you.
Hey, Bandit, me and Fred got a question.
What do you and Fred want?
How come we doing this?
Well, why not?
Well, they said it couldn't be done.
Well, that's the reason, son.
3 movies that have changed your life.
How long have you been a robber?
4'1".
Good Lord. Jolly good. 4'1".
Yes.
Well, that is a long time.
3 movies that have changed your life.
John, I want this material burned. All of it.
Welcome to another Britflix.com podcast. My name is Stuart Wright, and today's guest is a former development executive in Hollywood turned script consultant and founder of No Bullscript Consulting. Welcome to the show, Danny Manus.
Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. Now, we're going to be discussing 3 films that impacted everything in your adult life, as all guests do. But before that, we're going to tap into your screenwriting expertise and talk about 3 key topics that perhaps regularly crop up when you're dealing with clients. We're going to look at integrating the character and plot together, being able to identify your hook, and the art of scene writing. That sound like what you've signed up for?
Sure, yeah. I definitely remember those things.
Let us start with the first topic, which we agreed something along the lines of integrating the character and plot together, making sure they're intrinsically linked and making sense of that character. So what is it you're seeing in screenplays that needs work on to make this more effective?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the bigger notes that I give with my clients. And, my job, I will say, for anyone who doesn't know what a script consultant is to, work with writers, creatives, producers to kind of give feedback, give notes, help them improve their craft, their stories, their scripts, and ultimately their chances of, breaking in, breaking out, standing out. So we go through I see a lot of the same mistakes over and over, a lot of the same issues, craft issues, business issues. But, one of the big things that I tend to work on with my clients, with my mentees, is making sure that they're writing the right character for the right story, and making sure that their character actually, in these days, you're going to need an actor, a great actor of note, especially if you have a bigger project, to cast. And they are looking for specific things in their roles, in their scripts. And very often I see okay, you have a good story and you have a good character, but the two are on kind of a parallel track instead of, a track that is one, where the character arc and the plot development are intrinsically tied together. Instead of okay, there's a plot happening, and then at the end, the character decides to change. Instead of the plot is consistently forcing the character to make decisions, choices, actions, etc., that allows them to change over the course of the story. Or there's a character who needs, whatever their backstory or their flaw or their thing is, intrinsically ties to the thing that is happening in the plot of the story, and so making sure okay, if there's if it's a family drama, I don't know, I'm just taking an example, if there's a family drama and there's a father who doesn't really know how to be a dad because, he didn't have good parents and, he wasn't ready for fatherhood or something, then that flaw, that issue, that arc has to be tie directly into what is happening in the story that's going to get him to that place.
Got you.
You know, and so it's really doing more character bio work. And, you know, I don't mean like what's your character's favorite, you know, ice cream flavor or something like that. I guess some people do that, but it's the important stuff of doing a half a page, 3/4 of a page, like character bio, so that you know enough about your character to know going into your script what's important about this person. What do I have to get across to the audience? How do they, you know, tie into the story? Why it's the why them of it all.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
I always ask kind of like why them, why you, why now, you know, the three kind of whys of storytelling. And the why them is like, why is this the character, the best character to tell your story through? You know, and if you don't have an answer, then that's a problem. You know, if it's just like, oh, this character kind of reminds me of somebody I know, or he reminds me of me, or, you know, if that's your reason, like, okay, but what does that have to do with the story you're trying to tell? You know, why are they the best choice? Why is what they're going through going to be the most impactful, you know, way to tell this story? And I see way too often people kind of develop the plot and the character, but not together, you know, not in a natural way together. And that usually happens in the outlining stage.
So this sounds a lot like almost like the story should be emerging out of your character, or the character emerging out of the story, one or the other, not two diametrically opposed notions of existence. Like there's a robbery going on, and there's a timid person who never commits a crime, and you're like, why have we got these two people doing that story?
Right. Yeah. There's someone going through a nasty divorce, and there's also there's a bank robbery going on, but the two have nothing to do with each other. Well, they need to have something to do with each other. You know, something's got to happen that they both affect each other, and that A story and B story, the internal and the external, have to be intrinsically tied together in story. Oh, look at that.
There we go.
That worked.
That worked, didn't it? Well, there's an introduction there, and I think we covered a lot of ground quite quickly there. For the second element that you cover quite regularly with clients is being able to identify your hook. Make sure your script is high concept for your idea to stand out. So, I mean, this is like the golden ticket, isn't it? I guess if you the higher the concept, the more attractive it's going to be because it's going to seem unique. But how do you work with people to either get them better or to find them in the first place?
It's two things. Either someone doesn't know what their hook is, which is its own problem. You know, if you don't have a high concept hook, if you don't have an original take and in kind of an easily pitchable, you know, take on your story, what the new angle is that you're bringing to the story, what's the thing that's gonna, when you pitch your story, is gonna make people physically react.
Yeah.
That's usually your hook. You know, it's usually when you say your hook that you're going to get the eyebrows up or the wide eyes or you know, like you're going to get the reaction that usually comes from either your high concept hook or whatever twist, if you have some twist in your story. It's usually one of those two things.
Yeah.
And so, you know, having that hook is really just what takes a regular love story, you know, a very boring boy meets girl story, whatever, and makes it something different, you know, and makes it something much newer, much fresher, much more you, something that hopefully ties into the writer you are and your voice. But it's the thing that's going to stand out. And so either you don't know what your hook is, which often leads to the kitchen sinking of scripts. You know, you're throwing everything at it. You're making your script about everything, which actually makes your script about nothing.
Got you.
And you're just trying to find that one.
So what exercises?
And you're just throwing stuff.
What exercises would you do then to help get from no idea of concept to? Because I guess it's that idea of if I go to a meeting, you want me to go into that meeting confident I can convey my idea in a way that's interesting and exciting. That's what you're getting at, aren't you? Yeah. So what do you do to help people get there?
I do a lot of brainstorm outline consults. It's one of my favorite things to do with my writers. It's early on in the process. It's before the writing process, or sometimes they've written the script and we have to go back to the outline, to kind of explore that. But it is just honestly, I usually ask, what's the thing that drew you to this story? Like, what is the kernel of an idea or a character or thing that made you go, oh, I want to write that. That sounds really interesting to me. And if that's not the hook, then we have to go through, okay, what are the things that we can do to make your idea stand out that haven't been done, hopefully haven't been done 8 million times. And what is the way of telling the story that's going to make it different? And honestly, it's just brainstorming different directions, different things that stand out, hopefully connected to, back to the point, the first point, hopefully connected to that character that's going to make it interesting. It could be the location. It could be how to, like, once we kind of find the hook or find an idea, then it's how to exploit, how many ways can we exploit that idea in your concept? Because if you're only really diving into your hook once, for one major sequence, it's probably not really your hook. The hook is the thing that really is that story engine that's going to give you more opportunity to do more things in your story and keep it going and tie it all together.
In that sense, then, when you're working with a client, how do you ensure it's not your idea you end up developing, and the client is sort of the one doing the developing of the idea?
That's a great question. Look, sometimes it happens, and sometimes, especially if you're a writer, I give all my best ideas away. That is for sure. Said it for 20 years. I've given all my best ideas away. But look, that's why I always ask, like, what is the thing that drew you to this story? What is the thing that generally draws you to story that makes you want to write it? What is the thing you want this script to do for you? Like, what is the goal of this script? And the purpose of the script in terms of your career, your writing, so that any ideas that I may give or suggest or offer are still tied into your purpose, your idea, what you love about the story you
finish that thought. Go on.
Yeah. The type of story you want to write. So, look, sometimes because I've been doing this a long time and I have developed my story instincts over thousands and thousands of scripts and 20 plus years, sometimes I will come up with a better idea and the writer's like, oh shit, I like that idea. That's actually good. Can I use it? I was like, yeah, I'm not saying this just for me, this is for you, and so, that does happen, that it's like, oh, that is the thing I wanted to write. I just wasn't sure about it, or I wasn't sure how to get there, or if that could work. But we do the context work, or I try to do the context work, and that's why I do more notes calls and not written notes, so we can have a conversation and I can get the context of what you're trying to execute, so that any suggestions tie into that. And it's not just, well, I think you should do this because I have better ideas than you. That's not helpful. That's not good. It's, you have this idea. What if you did it this way? Would this give you more opportunity to play in your story? Would this give more opportunities to, heighten your story, elevate your story, exploit your hook even more in your story if you, tweaked it in this direction?
So in that sense, then it's kind of, you want to get to the intention first, as in what do I want to achieve as a writer in this script or whatever, and then we can look at, well, your execution isn't working, so if we go back to what your intention is, we can move forward and create opportunities that give you the execution you want.
Yeah, you just said it way better than I did. So yes, exactly.
I'm just trying to. It makes sense. That's why I was just trying to. It's because that's always the thing for me. I mean, I'm a writer, and I much prefer a conversation when I'm getting feedback than notes have a role, obviously, but They can always, you can't help but treat them as dictatorial, no matter how fluid or how free somebody says use them. You can't help but go, this is a school report, and now I've got to pass the test.
And look, I think I used to do that when I started. I've been doing No Bullscript for 17 years. In fact, this month is my 17-year anniversary.
Congratulations.
And so, it's a long damn time. But I've learned, I think, at the beginning, I was like, I was an exec. I was coming off, an exec job where we made writers often write what we needed or wanted them to write.
Yeah.
And, I think I had that mentality when I started. Now, many years later, it's a very different mentality, which is, I work for the writers. It's about what you want and me helping you find the best way to do that. And sometimes it goes back to like, why did you want to write this? What did you love about this? Okay, what made you go into this direction instead of this direction? And, sometimes writers just get stuck in that mindset of like, I have this idea and I'm going to write this idea. And it's just that tunnel vision. It's like, okay, but you're not seeing all the great, possibilities that your story has to go in other ways and explore other storylines or other, character or plot points or different ways of exploiting your hook. And so, that's I'm a brainstorming tool, for my writers.
I was going to say, because it sounds. Consultant is a very broad word. We know management consultants, that could mean a million things, and a script consultant. Obviously, people have perceptions of that, but actually, from what you're saying, part of what you're doing is coaching as much as your consultant. Consulting obviously is like, here's some information, and you go, right, okay, I respond to that. But then to get past that, it's a bit it sounds like you're clapping on the sidelines as much as anything else. Yeah. And that's not to be reductive. I think that's a positive thing.
No. Yeah. I mean, it is. It's story therapy, a little bit. Sometimes it just depends on where writers are in the process. If they're at the idea outline stage, if they're at the first draft stage, if they're at the 10th draft stage, if they're needing more career coaching and strategy, or just like, how do I write this, or is this a viable story, or which story should I write? So it is definitely a mixture of both. We do I do a lot of script notes, of course, that's the main job, but a lot of it is the other stuff too. And so we tackle things at I try to meet writers and their stories where they are and help them as best I can from that stage. And sometimes that's about going back to an earlier stage and figuring out why it's not working. And someone's like, but I'm on my 6th draft. I was like, yeah, but you've only been polishing the last 5. You never really did like a rewrite of your first draft to make sure it was working. You were just fixing tiny little holes, along the way, or changing little words, things. So, sure, it's your 6th draft, but it's the first draft that I've seen. So it's the first draft to me. And that's how executives think too. However many drafts you do before you send it out to an exec or a producer or a rep, it's still their first draft that they're seeing. Yeah. So they don't know or even care that you've done 20 drafts before it got to them. It's their first draft. Yeah, exactly. So you gotta have that mindset going in, and that's what I try to help.
Excellent. Okay, so for our final one, we're going to do a bit of craft now. So the art of scene writing, entering late and leaving early, but also ensuring your transitions from scene to another are effective. So do you want to talk about where you're seeing the problems and what are you doing with your clients to solve them?
Yeah, often, yes. And those couple things, the transitions, getting in, late, leaving early, those are little tricks. I think more on the polishing side than the original, like writing, so, the first draft, of scene craft. Really the key, and I know I keep saying outlining, but because that's so important and too many writers, especially starting out, are not doing it. But in the outline stage, which is just for you, it's really knowing like, what is the purpose of this scene? Within the context of the story, within the context of the character arc, within the context of like what the audience should be feeling, what is the purpose of this scene? What has to happen in this scene to reach that purpose?
Yeah.
what is the emotional intent of this scene? You know, what's the character supposed to feel in this scene, and what is the audience supposed to feel watching this scene, or the reader, you know, reading this scene? And so, you know, in the outline stage, as you're creating your scenes and you know, one by one going through your scenes, you should know those two things. What is the purpose? Three things, really. What is the purpose of this scene in the greater context of the story? What has to happen in this scene in order to achieve that purpose?
Yeah.
And what is the emotional intent of this scene? And if you can do that, then we get into the minutia of like, okay, how much setup do we need to get to that purpose? And once we reach that purpose, are we getting the hell out of that scene really quickly? Because if you reach the purpose, your scene is over. It has served its purpose.
Yeah.
So anything that comes after that line or that action or that thing that achieves its purpose is usually extra and is like what I like to call writer masturbation. You know, you're just, you know, writing on to hear yourself speak, and we all do it.
Oh, yes.
We all do it. We all do it.
We all do it, yes.
You know, and so it's knowing going into the scene what you have to achieve and why, and then knowing like, okay, I don't need all the conversational niceties at the start of some, you know, meeting where two characters are going to meet. So we see them drive into the parking lot. We see them stop the car. We see them get out of the car. We see them walk up to each other. We see them say, hi, how's it going? How's the weather? Nice day. You want to talk? Okay. We don't need any of that stuff. We just get right to them speaking and saying what, you know, as close to what they need to say as possible, you know, to build the dynamics of the scene. But we don't need 2 minutes of like bullshit setup, you know, to get there. And so, and once they have that thing, once the climax, the conflict of the scene is hit, and you've hit your emotional intent, you've gotten that, you know, out, you've gotten the purpose of the scene out, get out. Just cut to get to the next scene as quickly.
I saw a
as
great
possible.
example of this recently. I saw Jared Johnson's new film Odyssey, and the opening scene is just of a dentist pulling a tooth out. So you don't even see the main character. She's just having a tooth extracted. And then we cut to her in the reception, having had what obviously was an invasive operation. Her credit card not working, and then she just walks out, not paying. And you know so much about the character without... So you didn't need to see her get the bus to the dentist. You didn't need to see her. And the next thing is she's walking into her office, and it's a real estate office. So you kind of like, okay, who is this woman? And that's what the film's about to explore. But you didn't need any preamble. It was like just boom, boom, transition.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way of like, here's two shots and two specific actions that tell us a whole lot, you know? And if you can do that, you know, especially in a way to introduce a character, you know, through an action and just a shot like that, that is really using your space and time wisely, you know, and not giving us too much, but giving us everything we need to know. And that's hard. You know, it comes with experience. It comes with, you know, trial and error. It comes with, are you introducing your characters? Another scene work, you know, thing, but are you introducing your characters in a interesting, dynamic enough way? You know, is there conflict within each scene? And going back to our first point, how does the purpose of this scene and what you need to achieve in this scene affect and connect with the character and the character arc? So it's not just a plot scene. It's not just an info dump scene. It is a scene that has more than one purpose because it is advancing the plot, but also affecting the character or the character arc. See, we tied it back around to number one just at the buzzer. I love when we do that.
Thank you for discussing those three areas with us. I'll put a link in the show notes to No Bullscript Consulting so people can get access to that and get in contact with you through that. Now we shall move seamlessly into three films that have impacted everything in your adult life. Are you ready for this?
I am ready. Honestly, the buzzers on the first part helped me get ready for this next part.
Okay, rules are simple. Danny has given me three movies. I'm going to do them in the order that Danny gave them me. And we will talk for 5 minutes. And every time we hear that DEFCON 1 sound we've just got familiar with during the first part of the podcast, we will then stop and move on to the next film. Does that sound, I think I don't have to ask this, but obviously, does that sound on what you signed up for?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm ready.
First up, is the film script directed by Rob Reiner, rest in peace, that I guess put Aaron Sorkin on the map, and arguably, I think almost put the title of screenwriter on the map, if I'm honest.
Yep.
A Few Good Men from 1992, which tells the story of how a military lawyer tries to prove that two Marines charged with murdering a fellow Marine were only following orders from a base commander, played by Jack Nicholson. Interestingly, Aaron Sorkin, talking of like where ideas come from, he got it from his sister, who is a real life JAG attorney, and she literally is the role that Demi Moore plays in the movie. But tell me, why does this film have impact on you, and what memories does it hold?
So I figured I did realize I probably should have chosen a movie that I've worked on, but I did not. And so this, for many of the reasons you just said, I am an Aaron Sorkin huge fan. West Wing is my favorite show. One of my two favorite shows of all time. I love the way he approaches dialogue. Obviously I'm a huge Rob Reiner fan, and the two of them together are just something special, for me. And even when it came out, I think I was, 13 years old, but even I could see it had an effect that made me go, wow, there is a power in writing there. There is a way to, and I've read and seen the play, but obviously I saw the movie first. And just the way it is a masterclass in the rhythm and build of dialogue. It is a masterclass in how to build a scene, which we were just talking about, and just the peaks and valleys, and creating tension and the tie-in between creating tension and how to do that through dialogue in a scene. It uses a lot of thematic elements in the setting, in the weather, there's ways to kind of analyze the scenes and how they put it together. But at a core level, besides having one of the best ensemble casts of any film ever, everyone is in this movie.
Kevin Pollak said it was his best film experience ever.
It's so. I used to love big ensemble movies, and you'll see that in my one of my other picks too. But I used to doodle. Some kids doodle in classes. I would doodle movie titles with all the actors' names. That was my doodle. I had a whole book of movies with their cast. I loved a big ensemble thing, and I just the way that this movie hits, and also. I love a movie. I think everyone does. It's a writer's goal to have a line of dialogue that becomes part of the zeitgeist, that goes past the movie and hits pop culture and stays with you and becomes one of those iconic film lines that everybody loves. And You Can't Handle the Truth became a phenomenon and did exactly what you just said, which it put screenwriters on the map and made people go, oh, the writing is important. It's not just the acting, it's not just the directing, the writing, there is an art to the writing. And Aaron Sorkin, especially back in the day, did that better than anybody at that time. He understood the cadence and rhythm of dialogue to make a point, in a way that I think speechwriters took from him, at that time. That's why West Wing was so good. It's speechwriters took that from him and put it to work, in our regular lives. And for me, it was just a powerful way of telling a story, the way to get to that climax. And it has a great character arc and the backstory of, Tom Cruise's dad, and, and every character has a distinct point of view, on the issue at hand, on the military, on this case. Everyone has a different agenda. Everyone has a different point of view. They all have to get over that to get to the point. And so for me, it is this perfect little film. It's not little, but, it did quite well. But, it's this perfectly kind of acted, written, directed thing that just came together. And for me, it made me fall in love with dialogue. It's one of the first few movies that truly made me fall in love with writing compelling dialogue and just the rhythm of it all.
Also from 1992 is Danny's second choice, My Cousin Vinny, directed by Jonathan Lynn and written by Dale Lorna. It is a courtroom drama, like A Few Good Men, but there the similarities end because this satire of the genre about two New Yorkers accused of murder in rural Alabama comes to lurid life through the hilarious but deadpan performances of both Joe Pesci and Maria Tomei. The misunderstanding between Vincent Gambini and Judge Haller regarding the two Utes was a real conversation between Pesci and the director Jonathan Lynn. Lynn, being English like me, found it hard to understand the pronounced New York accent, and he decided the routine was so funny that he put it in the film. But tell me, why is this film so memorable, and what impact does it have on you, Danny?
You know, I didn't realize that they were both 1992, but that makes sense because that really, I was, like 12, about somewhere in there, and that was where in middle school, in the kind of 11 to 13, that's where my like true love of movies like really started. And this is my favorite comedy. Mm-hmm. And I know you said like you don't have to pick your favorite movies, but I kind of did on this one. Okay. This is my favorite comedy of all time. I've seen it 100 times. I remember watching it in the theater. I was 12. It was this may be a stupid reason, but I guess there are no stupid reasons.
No.
It was the first time that I remember that I could not catch my breath from laughter in a theater. And it's maybe only happened a half a dozen times since, to be honest, where you just like, you are wheezing with laughter and you can't catch your breath. And that stayed with me, the power of comedy. Again, yes, the dialogue will get me every time, but it made me, well, look, it made everybody fall in love with Marissa Tomei. Of course. Everyone already liked Joe Pesci and stuff, but it made everybody discover it was her first movie, and like everyone discovered Marissa Tomei and fell in love with her. And as a boy from Brooklyn, it was a little near and dear to my heart at the time. I don't have the accent anymore, but I never had that accent, from the movie. But at that time, Marissa Tomei was like, the dream girl of every guy from New York. But there are some things in this movie. Yes, the two Utes, there are so many standout lines, memorable moments, memorable bits that stand out. But for me, the deer story, there is a moment in here where they talk about, he's going hunting, and she goes, "You going hunting? What, for like deer?" And she goes, pretend you're a deer. You're walking through she does this whole thing. And then she's like, bam, a fucking bullet, rips off part of your head and your brains are everywhere. That is the moment I've memorized it. That was the first time as a kid that I memorized a bit, in a movie, because it made me laugh so damn hard, and it subverts the expectation of what you think the story is going to be. It is the scene that won her the Oscar. And it is hilarious. And to me, that was comedic storytelling, that hit a punch in the best possible way. And it was just a bit that stuck with me so hard. I did it for my parents over and over. I was very obnoxious. But like, to me, that was the thing. And, and I've shown people that movie since who, as an adult who had not seen it, and they love it. It's just one of those films that it holds up. It is still hilarious. It still works. And it underlines all the perfect things that make for great comedy: miscommunication, misidentity, misunderstanding. It's an underdog story. We may not love that. We're not supposed to love the character, but we do because he's so funny and so fish out of water, and a fish out of water underdog story based in miscommunication, the three misses of comedy: miscommunication, misidentity, misunderstanding. it uses all of those, and I look for those, or I see those so much in the script that I read, and it just does it in such a wonderful way. And so for me, it is the perfect, hilarious comedy.
Right then. For Danny's final choice, we're going to jump 5 years to 1997 for Ang
Could you
Lee's...
tell I was a 90s kid? Tell a 90s teenager?
For Ang Lee's Kevin Kline, Sigourney Weaver star of The Ice Storm, adapted for screen by James Schamus from Ricky Moody's 1994 novel. It's expertly observed early 1970s period piece about a handful of middle-class families experimenting with substance abuse and the swinging lifestyle, only to find their lives spinning beyond their control. Rick Moody, the author, said he was so pleased with the film, he sobbed through the credits. And Christina Ricci, interestingly, said this was the first, because obviously she was a child star, she said this was the first film she'd done that she would actually want to see as a moviegoer, which I think is interesting. Just, somebody who's famous growing up in the public eye, it must be difficult to make choices as you're growing up. But anyway, tell me, why does this film have impact on you, and what memories does it hold?
This one was interesting. This was my the first two. When you asked me for three, the first two I knew immediately. The third was the one that I had to think about and figure out. And originally, at first, it was going to be American Beauty. But I feel like A, people have probably chosen that one. B, maybe it doesn't hold up as well as it did at the time. And C, I was like, okay, but what I loved about American Beauty was in this 10 years, 8 years prior, 5 years prior.
Yeah.
And so, or a few years prior. And so like this, there almost is no American Beauty without the Ice Storm.
Yeah.
And James Schamus, who also did Brokeback Mountain, and it's an ensemble. I told you, I love an ensemble.
It is. I looked at that cast. It's phenomenal.
The cast is insane. And, Christina Ricci and I are the same age, and so I think we're within a year of each other. And so seeing not just the adult storyline of this story, but also the kid storyline with Tobey Maguire and Elijah Wood and Adam Hanbird and Christina Ricci, it was showing this this way of getting across suburban dysfunction, which I, for my teenage years at that time, I was in the middle of suburban dysfunction, a suburban kind of dysfunctional family, themes of like rebellion and consequences and, the secrets and lies and curiosities and consequences of those things on both an adult level and a teenage level, just really spoke to me, at that time and still do. It's a wonderfully made, wonderfully shot, beautifully shot film. The production design, the costume design, it's set in 1973, so it's not a 90s movie, it's before that, before I was born, and yet the themes and the storyline and the characters still work. Now, at that time, I don't think I knew much about like what swinging, was, and so it was also a very titillating movie at the time in both the adult and teen storylines, but it really just explored really interesting themes in a beautifully shot way. And if you haven't seen it, it's also one of my favorite actresses of all time, Allison Janney. It's one of her first films. Okay. She's a supporting character in it, but it also made you fall in love with her. And if you have seen her later work and, in The Help and stuff like that, you can see remnants in the character she plays in The Ice Storm. And so I love a dysfunction movie. I love a family dysfunction movie. I think it was also the first script that I had written, because we all write our own personal traumas and our own true stories as the first script and our therapy script, if you will. And I saw things like The Ice Storm and American Beauty and stuff like that as permission to write your own, kind of family dysfunction and stories. And so It's just true cinema. This movie is pure cinema. It was a bomb. It only made $8 million.
No, I remember.
Did not do well.
Yeah.
But it is emotional. It is touching. It is titillating. It is exciting. The ice storm, there's obviously very literally an ice storm, an ice storm in the movie, but thematically it plays in so well. And so if you haven't seen this little indie gem, I strongly suggest it. I still have, actually, right up here, I have the script to screen book that I bought when I was 20, in college. And I still have it. I think I got it on eBay because I thought that was how people got scripts back in the day. And so I still have it up there. And I just keep it. I still love this movie.
Brilliant. Well, look, thank you for sharing 3 films that have impacted everything in your life. They were brilliant stories attached to your personal biography of watching movies and how they shaped you. Before you go, one last question. Obviously, I'll put a link in the show notes to Noble Script Consulting. But can I ask, from your point of view, what makes a good writer a client for being consulted with? Obviously, a lot of times is what makes a good script consultant. But actually, from your point of view, what do you think makes a good writer in terms of, because obviously it's part and parcel of development. You're going to go through a similar process with a producer. You're going to go through with an exec if you get that far. So, what do you think makes a good writer in terms of you being an effective consultant?
That's such a good question, and people don't usually ask. The same thing that makes a good client for me makes a good writer to work with an exec, which is someone that has a vision and has a voice, or wants to develop their voice, but also is collaborative. Mm-hmm. Is open to notes, is able to take, digest and also execute, feedback, can take a step back from their own writing, which is really hard to do. We all have a hard time doing it. I do as well. And because of that, we all need feedback from an outside source, hopefully an unbiased source, and not just your mom or your best friend, or even not just your writing partner, which is great, but they're seeing you in the same way. And so someone who is open, someone who can take notes and then understand the note behind the note, or at least will ask. That's a lot of what I do, is explain the note behind the note, because execs usually won't. They'll just give you the note and you'll be like, why did they give this note? And because I was an exec, I can at least often explain the note behind the note and why those notes are being given, and not just this is the note, go do it. But this is the note. This is why we're giving the note, so that you can understand it when you get that note. And writers that want to write, first of all, and look, I'm not some people don't love to write. Aaron Sorkin famously hates to write. And that's why I think I love him so much, because some people are just I can't wait to write today. I'm not that person. I love having written.
I'm the same.
I love having.
I'm the same.
It's like going to the gym. I don't like going to the gym. I love having gone to the gym. Same thing with writing. I like having written. I don't love the process of writing, and that's okay. Everyone has their thing, but it's someone who has a vision for their career. It's someone who knows what draws them to story, or at least wants to find out. Someone who just wants to improve. If you think you know everything and you think you're where you need to be, then you don't need anybody, and that's not somebody anybody really wants to work with, but it's just somebody who wants to understand the process, because it is the development process, that I'm my writer's own personal little development exec, on their projects. If you want to learn or go through that process before you have to do it with a producer and go through it the hard way and go through the development hell of it all, this is a great way to practice, and also just get your scripts and your pitches and your voice where it needs to be, and just develop your skills. And so anyone, honestly, I used to work with a lot of like first time writers on their first scripts, on their first drafts. I don't do that too much anymore, but if you are in that stage where you're just trying to get to that next step, whatever that next step is, you're trying to go from outline to first draft, you're trying to go from, first draft to really good draft, or you're trying to go from really good draft to great draft. Wherever a writer feels like they need some guidance and feedback and help, that's when to reach out. And sometimes that's really early in the process, and sometimes it's in the middle, and sometimes it's late stages. So I kind of work, any which way.
Got you.
But as long as writers are open and want the feedback, and want honest feedback, and not just the pat on the back and, hey, you're doing a great job, buddy, keep at it. Like if they really want the honest feedback, then that's the type of writer I want to work with.
Sounds great. One last thing. One thing I didn't say when we were talking about A Few Good Men. An unnamed executive, I don't know if you've heard this story, but an unnamed executive gave Aaron Sorkin a note that said, if Tom Cruise and Demi Moore aren't going to sleep with each other, why is Demi Moore a woman? To which he responded, wow. I said, the obvious answer, women have purposes other than to sleep with Tom Cruise. And apparently he said this incident was his worst experience as a screenwriter. I'm pretty sure there's no note behind that note.
No, the note behind that note is someone should fire that executive. Yeah. That's I had not heard that story, actually. That does not surprise me. No. But I mean, it doesn't surprise me that a dumb exec would give that note, and it certainly doesn't surprise me that Aaron Sorkin would say that. But
no, it's great.
It makes me love it even more.
Indeed. Well, look, it just gives me to say thank you very much for giving your time on the Britflix podcast.
Of course, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I'll have to come back with another 3 that I actually that were not from the 90s, and maybe one that I worked on.
Exactly. No, we'll make sure that happens.
Hey, Bandit, me and Fred's got a question.
What do you and Fred want?
How come we doing this?
Well, why not?
Well, they said it couldn't be done.
Well, that's the reason, son.
3 movies that have changed your life.
How long have you been a robber?
4'1".
Good Lord. Jolly good. 4'1".
Yes.
Well, that is a long time.
3 movies that have changed your life.
John, I want this material burned. All of it.
Hey there, Hugh from Podderation here. If you like today's show, why not check out Malt and Magic, a D&D podcast where things are almost literally homebrewed. Malt and Magic is a show that focuses on the immersive and collaborative natures of TTRPGs, working with a cast of amazing characters to create an epic hub where fantasy, mystery, sci-fi, horror, and cyberpunk all collide in one gripping, funny adventure. If you'd like to hear more, check out our website at podderation.com.